we're back. Welcome to your day 3. Before I get into that, I just wanted to get one thing out of the way. You might start to notice now that starting with day 2, you're going to notice that you're getting a new assignment with every single class that you're going to get. And it might at some point become a little bit overwhelming. So what I suggest from this point forward is if you want, you can do these practices every day as you get these emails, or you can space it out by a week. You can dedicate one full week to just doing the gratitude journal and developing that practice and continuing that practice throughout this process. But then the next week, you can start focusing on day 3. Next week, focus on day 4. Next week, focus on day 5. That way you start to stack up your practices and devote enough time to developing your practice with each of these topics. So that being said, let's move on to what we are focusing on today. For day 3, we're talking about truthfulness. We've already talked about our why. We're doing our gratitude journals, and now we are building up that foundation, going up that ladder into this next portion, which is actually going to be a little bit more difficult. But remember, we are leveling up here. So it is going to increase a little bit more in difficulty because we're building that strong foundation. So why are we talking about truthfulness? What does that have to do with building up our self-love and harnessing our inner power? Everything. Has everything to do with it. I want you to imagine having all this junk that you've piled up over the years. All this stuff that you don't want, but you can't really bring yourself to actually get rid of all of it. So you stuff it in a closet, you just throw it in there. There's really no way of organizing it because you just want it out of the way and out of sight. Over the years, as you start to, pack on more things into your life that you don't necessarily want, but don't really want to get rid of either, or can't get rid of, you throw it back into this closet. And the closet gets more and more stuffed. There's all this old dust that has solidified, and there's dust flying in the air. There's cobwebs and spiders hatching eggs, and there's rat droppings, and I'm getting really graphic for a reason. So just hang on with me there. And then one day the closet, it just gets so full to the point where it just all falls apart. It's an avalanche of neglected memories falling apart, crumbling down, spilling out of the closet, burying you in all of its weight, burying you in all of the gross stuff that's in it, including the dust, the cobwebs, the rat droppings, and everything. And it's overwhelming. It's a lot. That's exactly what happens when you don't practice truthfulness in your life. Because not having truthfulness in your life, it creates a mentality where there's a lot of repressed feelings, a lot of repressed memories, and a lot of denial, not being able to come face to face with what has happened in your life or certain beliefs that you have developed over the years. When you repress the truth, when you deny the truth, the original problem doesn't go away. In fact, it actually gets much, much worse. And it gets worse because the universe is trying to shake you and scream, look at me, look at me, handle it, deal with it, clean it up and get rid of it. You can't do that if you don't face it. If you just completely ignore it, it goes back to that saying that you probably hear a lot, that when you don't acknowledge something, you can't change it. And so to kind of drill this further for you, what happens when you lack truthfulness in your life? When truthfulness is not practiced, it leads to a lot of things that dominate your life. You start to overthink because you're constantly skirting around the truth, driving around the truth, and trying to justify a false narrative in order to fit the story that you want. You become overwhelmed and very, very confused. What else? You lose a whole lot of clarity. You begin to develop a strong sense of self-doubt because you're constantly unsure. That uncertainty, that lack of clarity comes from the fact that you're not acknowledging the truth of the situation. You're constantly defending the lies that you create, defending the stories and the false narratives that you're trying to defend. What else? You attract toxic relationships and or toxic behaviors. Everything that I mentioned previously can easily come from gaslighting. When you're so disconnected from the truth, you deny yourself the ability to see the truth in every situation, which makes you vulnerable to things like gaslighting and abusive behaviors. When you're in a constant state of insecurity and self-doubt, you attract that same energy to you, and that comes in the form of toxic relationships. Your mind and your life is in a constant state of fear because you're constantly running away from the truth. You're running away in the opposite direction, but then the truth, it's always following you. So when you're in a constant state of fear, you don't have confidence in yourself. You don't have trust in your life. It goes back to uncertainty, confusion, and self-doubt. And that is no way to live. But luckily, there is a way to completely change that. But why do we repress our feelings and go through denial? We do this for a lot of reasons. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to create more conflict or come off as weak or overly sensitive. We want to please people. And a lot of times this comes from a place of ego, the way we identify ourselves in our physical form. And it comes from a place of pride too. And a lot of that is very valid. You might have grown up as a child with constantly being ridiculed whenever you spoke up. And if that's the case, then it's very easy for you to start believing that other people are more right than you are, that your intuition and your instincts aren't valid resources of truth. And that's okay, because this is why we are here right now. We're here to unpack all of those things. And there's a lot of ways that we're going to tackle this right now, which is why I do recommend you practice this specific thing for a week before you move on to the next thing. You can practice this for a whole month because, sometimes it takes some time to really come to our truth and become honest with ourselves about how we feel, honest with ourselves about the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about others, and the way our negative thinking patterns are kind of operating to support whatever toxic stuff is happening in our lives. So, for however long you need to, I want you to do these 3 exercises. The first one is to continue practicing your gratitude journal in whatever way it is that you need to do it. The reason why you want to do this is because it goes back to what I've said in the previous video, that it creates clarity. It helps bring you closer to your truth, and it helps you build up strength and confidence because you're cleaning out all that clutter, all that extra stuff that is dominating your brain, making it go over and over and over and obsessing over the same old thing and also taking you nowhere. It helps clear out that clutter. So that's part 1 of it. The second part is I want you to practice courage. Coming to your truth is an extremely courageous act. The fact is that sometimes we live in a place of fear and denial and repression because we're afraid to face the truth of a situation. I know that was especially true for me. I spent a good 10 years in extreme denial about a very specific situation. And it did a lot of harm to me. It led me down a path of just straight up toxicity. And it was really bad, but we're not gonna go too deep into that today. So coming to your truth, it can be really hard. So I want you to start practicing courage, whatever that looks like for you. Every day, I want you to do one thing, just only one thing that scares you a little bit. Maybe it makes you feel nervous to do, answering a certain email right away, or just telling your significant other that I don't like it when you leave the toilet seat up. Anything, whatever that small little thing that makes you feel a little bit fearful and nervous, just do it. Use Mel Robbins' 5-second rule. Count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just do it, and see where it takes you. See how it kind of opens up your mind a little bit. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're trying to challenge your fear and the belief system surrounding it, and reminding yourself and teaching yourself to see that actually I'm okay. The last exercise for this is extremely important starting now and for the rest of your journey, for the rest of your life. It's practicing satya and ahimsa. So for those of you who are not familiar with yoga philosophy, satya and ahimsa is the first two yamas, which is the foundation for everything that is in a yoga practice and yoga belief. Ahimsa means nonviolence, and satya means truthfulness, which is what we're talking about today. The reason why we want to pair these two is because you want to be honest with yourself, but in a supportive, loving, nonviolent kind of way. If you're anything like me, I used to be the person who was just like so blunt and so proudly blunt that it didn't really matter whose feelings I hurt, because to me, I'm being a good person, I'm being a good friend, I'm telling the truth as it is. That is actually a false narrative and a false belief system that I had, because if you are really trying to help someone, if you're really trying to be a good friend, then you shouldn't deliver truth in a way that is your own personal preference. You should be serving truth in a way that is easily digestible and supportive for the other person, So instead of saying things like, oh, your nail beds are disgusting, right? That might be truthful, it's honest, but it's hurtful and pretty harsh to begin with. And you just tell them, oh, yeah, your nail beds are like looking a little funky here and there. Maybe we should go get a manicure. Or maybe not even say that, just say, hey, let's go get a manicure so that you can have really nice nails or something like that. And it's the same that goes for yourself, right? Be honest and truthful in a way that is not only kind and loving, but in a way for you to be able to actually face certain truths. Now, going deeper into that, I want you to start exploring certain questions when it comes to satya with ahimsa. I want you to start thinking about what stories am I telling myself in order to fit a certain narrative that I want it to fit, and how much of that is actually true. What truths am I denying myself? What truths am I too afraid to see? What feelings am I literally pushing down and not acknowledging at all whatsoever? Especially when you start to get into conflict or certain situations that are making you feel a little bit hurt, and you catch yourself starting to repress certain feelings, ask yourself later on, after the moment has passed, why am I doing that? At what extent do I need to repress my feelings in order to make sure that we can solve the problem productively? And at what point am I doing that in a way that's actually very harmful to myself and the truth? The thing is that our feelings are a very strong guide to where we need to heal. And sometimes expressing those feelings instead of pushing it away, pretending like it's not there, is the fastest way for us to heal and live our fullest and most expressive selves. So I want you to explore those questions while you are practicing ahimsa. You want to come to your own truth. You want to express your own truth, because that's the only way progress can happen. If you stay in this stuck place where you're in denial and you refuse to acknowledge any of the things that are going around you, then guess what? Nothing's going to change. You can practice your why, you can practice your gratitude, and you will see some powerful changes from that for sure. But it's always going to be limited because you're not allowing yourself to face certain realities that are occurring in your life, and therefore you live in a place of lies all the time. So going back over in review of what we need to do: 1, practice your gratitude journal. Always practice your gratitude journal. Always have a strong gratitude practice. 2, practice courage, doing something that's a little bit scary every day. If you have an opportunity to really face one of your fears, by all means, do it. Go to Mel Robbins' 5-second rule where you count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and just do it. Just like that. And the last one, explore the questions that I have just listed and use ahimsa while you do it. The fact is that, like, you know, you can be as blunt as you want, but then if it puts you in a state where like you feel defensive and fearful and unsafe, you're not going to be able to take on the truth. So be your own best friend, be your own support system, and be as kind and loving to yourself throughout this process as much as you can. Well, that's it for us today. I'll see you in the next one, and feel free to ask me any questions. If you haven't Sorry, I just got distracted by a noise. But if you haven't yet joined the Facebook group, feel free to join there. Be one of the first people in that group so that you can share your story and also provide support to your other sisters and brothers that are on the same journey as you. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.